It's a minute past the hour, and let's go ahead and get started. I want to first welcome everybody to this March webinar, How to Overcome this Housing Market's 5 Biggest Challenges. We're super excited about it. I'm joined by Steve Harney, the founder of KCM. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, how you doing, David?
We are good. We're good. We're ready for it. So you and I were talking just a minute about questions, but let's talk for a minute about this webinar. It's something that our team has done a lot of research on over the last couple of months, even in going into the end of last year. And you're out there right now talking to agents and speaking or personally all across the country. What are you hearing from them right now?
Well, David, I've probably been in front of over 5,000 agents over the last probably 6 weeks. And the one thing I could definitely tell you is, there was some concern coming into this year that the market might be at a little bit more of a standstill, that, when interest rates jumped up at the end of last year, everybody started to get a little bit nervous and jump back up on the fence. But what I'm hearing from agents from, Hawaii all the way to Florida or up to Maine is that their business is good. Their open houses are full. Millennials are coming to the market. They're doing deals. They're making money. I had one mortgage person that was in a room told me his business was up 100% over the same time last year. Wow. So I do think that some of the concern we had coming into this year is going to drift away pretty quickly, based on the business we're seeing right now. So
that's great news. No, I appreciate you sharing that and sharing what agents are saying right now. In the spirit of everything that we've worked on for this webinar, I pulled a quote from Sam Cater from Freddie Mac, and I wanted to share that and just get your take on it. And I've got it up here. It says, "We're in a mental recession. It's a constant stream of negative headlines for a couple of months. It wears on you." And so it seems with what you're sharing and happening out in the market, and this seem to be at odds a little bit.
Well, there are definitely a lot of negative headlines. What we have to realize is that any report that we do, or every report that's done, I should say, that we report on, is reporting on something that happened prior, in the past couple of months. So I think there are a lot of negative headlines. I think that some of that is based on the fact that some of the business that didn't transpire or marginally transpired in the late fall, early winter is now being reported on. Mm-hmm. So there's a time lag there. The second thing I think is that we all know that negative news sells quicker than positive news.
Right.
So I think that, I don't know if it's a misinformation situation or a disinformation situation, but there's a lot of negative headlines and a lot of negative first paragraphs. But when you read through the rest of the report, we see that, well, wait a second, this wasn't bad news, this was good news. But I'm just not sure how many consumers go all the way through.
Right. It's a good point. It's a good point. You've talked about that a lot. Let's hop in. We talked about in this webinar, we're going to cover 5 topics. So the first one that we have is really this topic about prices. What actually will happen with home values this year in 2019? So where do you see things right now, and what do you see? We're almost through the first quarter. The rest of this year looking like?
Well, actually, I think, David, that's kind of 2 different questions. Remember, is what do we see and what do we think is going to take place? Because I think there's a little bit of a change happening as we speak. So let me give you an example of that.
Okay.
Case-Shiller is something that we look at every single month. They put out a report, a 20-city report on where prices are year over year. So what we've seen that over the last 12 months, that is very slowly, the amount of appreciation compared to the same month last year is slowing from anywhere in the high 6s. It was drifting down to 4% last month. The new report just came out this morning, about an hour and a half ago, and it showed that it drifted down a little bit more to about 3.6%. So what we've been saying and what a lot of people have been talking about is, unlike the crash of 2008, this plane is like coming in for a really soft landing. It's very gradually going back to normal appreciation levels, which is about 3.5 to 3.75%. So It looks like this plane is going to touch down on the ground, and if you're in the plane, you might not even feel the wheels hit the ground. That's how soft the landing is going to be. So that's what we've seen up until this point in the reports. Now, something interesting. Two things. Number one is the home price expectation survey came out about 10 days ago, and they actually changed their projection upward from the high threes to the low fours. So what we're seeing now is people are seeing that the market is really doing much better in the first quarter than they had anticipated. They're now saying that appreciation will slow even less, meaning we might still stay at that 4.5 number and not drop down into that 3.5 number. In either case, we have appreciation. It's all according to the levels. And just yesterday, First America kind of doubled down on what the home price expectation survey said. They said that where they thought prices would kind of level out at normal appreciation, we're probably going to finish 2019 a little bit above that, somewhere in the low to mid fours. So as far as prices going forward, we're in good shape. And whether you look at the home price expectation survey, Ivy Zelman Z report, the Mortgage Bankers Association, the National Association of Realtors, Fannie Mac, Freddie Mac, no one is projecting depreciation. They're all projecting that appreciation will slow.
Right. It's when I hear that, and I think, our team here does all the research and grabs these numbers. If I'm listening today and that's my market, then that's it's certainly exciting. But what would you say to the agent that says, hey, I'm seeing price reductions right now in my market? I'm seeing things that lead me to believe there may not be that.
Well, I think that, first of all, in certain markets, there definitely is going to be more pressure on prices. So if we divide it up, we just gave you national numbers. Now let's give you national numbers, but based on categories of homes. Every market has a lower-end home, a mid-range home, and an upper-end home. Sometimes they call them premium homes.
Right.
What we're seeing is in the lower end that those prices, because demand is still strong and supply is still light, those prices are still appreciating at a pretty decent level. In the mid-range, that level of appreciation is slowing a little bit. In the upper end, if you're dealing in an upper end market, or you're dealing in the upper end of your market, there's a lot more inventory there. So I would tell everyone, go ahead and check the month supply of inventory on the price point that you're going to take that listing or about to make that offer on, and see if you have far less than 6 months inventory, then appreciation is going to still be pretty strong in that marketplace. If you have much more than 6 months, like in some upper end markets, you might have 8, 9, 10 months inventory.
Right.
Well, yeah, then prices have to be adjusted. There's no question about that. Across the country, there's only 2 markets that have been identified as maybe being really overheated, and we have to see. That's the San Francisco market and the San Diego market. Both of those markets are definitely, and even talking to agents on the ground in both of those markets, they're starting to see a little bit of maybe a price adjustment to the negative, a little bit of depreciation. Now, San Francisco seems to be coming back now at the beginning of the year. San Diego, we don't have all those numbers in. But no one is projecting that those 2 markets are like the canary in the coal mine, that it's indicative of what's going to happen around the rest of the country. I think the rest of the country is going to see exactly what we're talking about. In the lower end, your appreciation is going to be probably above 5, and your middle range is going to be about that 4 number. And in the upper range, and I didn't read the full report, the report came out today, saying in the upper range, that might be closer to a 2 or 3% appreciation.
Right.
Now, if agents have priced their homes hoping the market would catch it, which is a lot of times that happen. Now, we priced the house at maybe a little bit more than its true value, knowing that over the last 5 years, the market always caught it. That's not going to happen now.
Right.
And that's why I think we're seeing some of those price reductions. We have to get it down to a number that the buyer today is going to buy it. All right. Not that inflated number we put on it when we originally listed it in some cases.
Right. We talked a little bit on the front end of, about the news and things that are happening. We're talking now about appreciation and what's happening in different markets. What would you say, before we go on to kind of the next question, what would you say to agents that are listening right now? We're going to give them, a recording of this, the slides they can use, but how do they listen and use this information to go out there and communicate that?
Well, that's the question. That's the best question you could possibly ask me. There are 3 things we need to do if we consider ourselves a truly great realtor or a great real estate professional. All right, the 3 things we have a duty to do is, number 1 is we have to control the narrative. All right, meaning that in all of our marketing, and I'm so glad that so many agents are now seeing the power of social media, but in all of our marketing, whether we're doing mailings, whether we're doing an email campaign, whether we're doing social media, whether we're knocking on doors,
Right.
we have to get the message out there to what's truly happening in the market. There are so many people out there, saying, well, we're going back to 2008, that the next market crash is going to happen. We have to make sure that we offset that misinformation, and in some cases it's intentional, that disinformation, and we tell them what truly is happening. By control the narrative, some people, I don't want anyone thinking I'm saying we should put a positive spin on anything. That's definitely not what I'm saying. What we should be doing is doing it truthful, really be truthful about what's taking place. So the first step is, in all of our marketing, we have to get away from, cherry pie recipes and funny jokes, and we have to get into, market data, the information that the consumer needs to make a good decision, and offset some of the mistakes being made in mainstream media. Second thing is, on every one of our presentations, I don't care if it's a listing presentation, I don't care if it's a buyer consultation, I don't care if you're presenting an offer and you should have a presentation for presentation of offer, or whether you're getting a price break. If you have a lot of houses in the upper end and you're looking for a price adjustment, you better have the information to explain what's taking place in the market at your fingertips. And I don't care if you're doing your listing presentation on an iPad or you're still using a 3-ring binder. Really strong graphics, like some of the things you're going to show here, will help the consumer understand why you are saying what you're saying. And I think that's crucially important. And the third thing, and I know I'm kind of a little long-winded on this answer, David, I apologize. That's good. The third thing, I think the agents are pretty good at the appointments. I think that they won't blow a listing appointment. They won't blow a buyer consultation. Where I don't think we're as strong is in the pre-appointment appointment. Meaning when, like, someone walks up to us at our daughter's basketball game and says, I was thinking about putting my house on the market, but I'm reading in a paper that, things look like they might be going back to where it was a decade ago, so maybe I should just sit tight. You better make sure that right at that moment you can, again, control the narrative with that person and say, no, let's tell you what's really happening. I know agents are good at putting pictures of their cat on their phone, pictures of what they ate for dinner last night on their phone, their children and grandchildren. They should have great, very simple to understand graphs on their phone explaining what's taking place in the market right now. So that when they do bump into someone at their daughter's basketball game, they can just pull their phone out and say, well, no, let me give you a couple of examples why that's not the case. That actually is a good time to put your house on the market.
Right.
They should have their ready-handed. We call that the pre-appointment appointment.
Right.
You're not going to get the listing there, but you're going to get the listing appointment there. It'll guarantee you'll get to the table the next day. And sometimes you might be at a supermarket and a woman walks up to you and says, my son and daughter-in-law are now expecting their first child. They want to buy a house. I want them to have a house so that the kid has a backyard. But, I'm hearing that now's not a really good time to buy a house. Maybe they should continue to rent for another couple of years. Right. You better be able to pull out your phone and give them some really good information and a couple of quick graphs, charts, saying why now is a good time to purchase a home. Again, you're not going to sell the house at the supermarket, but you're going to use that to get in front of that son and daughter-in-law. So their kid does have a room they can paint whatever color they want to paint it, and they do have a backyard they can put a swing set in.
Right. No, it's a great point. And I'll add to that, following today's webinar, we're going to send out probably tomorrow morning the recording for it, the access, if you're a KCM member, to the slides, and really using those slides. So keep a lookout for that link to get the access to this information and use it the way Steve talked about. So let's hop on to the next question.
Now, are you doing the slides, David? I don't see them on my page. You're putting some slides up while we're talking, or no?
Correct. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So they can see the slides and the visuals. Yep.
Okay.
So the next question is around prices. What really is going to happen, with prices with demand as we go into the future, and really would that demand soften if mortgage rates rise in the future? So, well, let's park on that for just a minute.
Yeah. Again, you're asking multiple questions in one, and you're pretty good at that. So let me break it down.
Okay.
The first thing is demand is very strong right now. It's stronger than anyone anticipated it being. So I do think that we're going to be fine in that regard. But even the people that were projecting, where sales were going to be going forward, and that would be the Mortgage Bankers Association, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. They're projecting that 2019 is going to be better, and in two of those three cases, much better than it was just last year. So what winds up taking place right now, I think that we're going to have the number of sales, the number of transactions, the number of families we get involved with is going to increase. Now, they've already made their projections, and those projections were based on, how we finished last year. I think that what we're going to see is an upgrade on those projections as we move forward. Of course, again, no one anticipated that the existing home sales report last week was going to show an 11% jump over the month before, the largest jump in 4 years. Right? So now people are saying, well, wait a second, maybe the market's not as bad as we thought it was going to be. So I think we're going to see the projections as far as sales are concerned going up. As far as interest rates, well, that was interesting also, because at the end of last year, or the middle of last year, they jumped from 4 to 4.5%. All right. And that, first of all, caused sticker shock, because 4.5% is not a bad interest rate. But a lot of people jump up. Then they jumped up almost to 5%, caused more sticker shock. Well, now, right now, they're lower than they were this time last year. They're lower than they were at last year's spring buyer market. And remember, last spring was dynamite. The market didn't fall off the shelf until in the middle of the year. So we started the year last year very, very strongly. So if we're even close to where we were last year, I think that we're going to do very well going forward. Interest rates, they're not projecting interest rates to go up now. As a matter of fact, they're feeling very, very secure. Fannie Mae came out yesterday saying they don't see them going up more than 4.5% by the end of the year. All right. So we got 12 months of phenomenal interest rates. And I think that means we're going to have 12 months of phenomenal, transaction counts.
Right. Well, I think what I'm hearing you say is it looks good, and it could look even better, as we go throughout the year.
The projections are it's going to be really good, and that's not my projections. That those are projections again from Mortgage Bankers Association, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ivy Zelman. They're all projecting it's going to be good. What I'm saying is based on what I'm hearing and seeing over the first couple of months of this year, it might be a lot better than really good.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. So the issue of demand and certainly rates are tied to the economy, which kind of leads us into that next question that we talked about on the front end of this idea of hearing about a recession, when it might happen, economic slowdown, and ultimately what that impact is on the market. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. First of all, let's define or decipher where that talk is coming from, where those headlines are coming from. And we're seeing more and more headlines talking about that. Now, we're going to get to the studies in a second, but we also have to realize where we're heading. We're heading into probably the most contentious presidential election ever in our nation's history. Now, the reason I say that is not to get political. I don't want to be political. But we know that the headlines, the vitriol, the sound bites coming from both sides of the aisle are going to be really intense. So we have to be prepared for that. And where we are right now is the economy has done very well for, ever since the crash, it's been building. This is the longest recovery we've ever seen in our history. So people are saying that there's going to be an economic slowdown coming down the road. What is an economic slowdown? Well, that's the definition of a recession. So let's go where these headlines are coming from, because I don't want people thinking it's just vitriol. There were 4 major studies done in the last year. It was the Wall Street survey of economists. Number 2, there was the Pulsomic survey of economists and market analysts. Number 3, there was the Duke University of American Chief Financial Officers, CFOs. And just recently, a couple of weeks ago, the National Association for Business Economics actually surveyed its members. All 4 surveys came up with the same thing. As a matter of fact, I think you have a chart that you can show us breaking down. Yeah, there it is, breaking down each survey. What the survey showed is the majority of people believe very strongly that the recession, this economic slowdown, will happen the end of this year or sometime next year. Now, if we take all these graphs and put it into one, all right, so it may be a little simpler to understand. Yeah, there we go. We'll see that whatever that number is, 22 plus 46% of those surveyed over those 4 surveys believe that, yes, this is where we are right now. We're going to see recession coming in the near future, the next 18 to 24 months. Right. So what we need to do, we can't hide from that. That's what the situation is. What we need to know is that a recession in the consumer's mind is going to be what happened in 2008. They're going to make it a housing crisis, because people always go back to the last example of something and say, well, that's what it is. A recession is not a housing crisis. A recession is very simple. It's 2 consecutive quarters. This is the definition from Merriam-Webster Dictionary. 2 consecutive quarters where GDP slows up. Mm-hmm. It's an economic slowdown. I would suggest to every single person on this webinar that they understand that every time someone says a recession, they're thinking 2008. Right. You have to change those words. Again, we're talking about controlling the narrative. Mm-hmm. You have to change those words and make sure that those words are, we change them to the definition. We're not trying to play word games here. Right. Change it to the definition. Yes, there will be an economic slowdown coming sometime in the next 18 to 24 months. Then also understand what recessions in the past, what impact they've had on the market. Obviously, the last recession was wrapped around a housing crisis. Mm-hmm. So prices fell dramatically. But you have a great graph there going back the last 4 recessions prior to that. And the previous 4 recessions, only one time did prices actually depreciate, less than 2%. The other 3 times, prices appreciated. And in 2 of those 3 times, they appreciated more than the normal historic appreciation of 3.5%. Right. So a recession does not mean housing crisis. A recession does not mean prices are going to drop. What it means is there's going to be an economic slowdown. Mm-hmm. I think that when we talked about Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the Mortgage Bankers Association, Ivy Zelman, they're already baking that into their projections for transactions. So I think transactions are going to be strong. I think that prices will continue, to moderate, not depreciate, but we'll get back to more normal appreciation. And maybe we'll fall a little bit below normal appreciation in the middle of that recession. But probably the best thing I can say to that is what Morgan Housel said. He said, and he's a great financial planner, probably the most sought after speaker on the financial end right now. Right. He said, this recession that's coming, it might be over before we even knew it happened. Mm. This is not going to be 2008. And ladies and gentlemen, I talked to you before about the fact that you should have some slides, some information right on your phones, because you're going to be involved in conversations. I talked about your daughter's basketball game, the supermarket, the ballet, the movie theater, a family picnic. Right. People are going to come up and say, oh, well, it's about, you should have this particular slide that David's showing you right now on your phone. You have probably 10 or 12 slides on your phone. This one's a definite. You want to, when someone tells you, well, there's a recession coming, prices are going to drop just like they did the last time, you want to bring this out and say, well, no, that's not what happens normally during a recession. It did happen last time because the housing market was wrapped around that recession. That's not the case right now.
Right. No, it's interesting information. And I was sitting there listening to you. We get questions from time to time on this topic. And really, what would you say if somebody is in a scenario and it's not brought up and their clients aren't asking, do they bring it up instead? Do they, how do you handle that?
Well, let's go back to what we were saying before. There's a lot of headlines and a lot of headlines, and realize that any headline on the recession is based on those 4 surveys that I just mentioned to you. Right. Those real live surveys by very reputable organizations of very reputable people. So that information's out there. The fact that they're not bringing it up to you doesn't mean they didn't read it, doesn't mean they're not thinking about it, doesn't mean any of those. So if we don't bring it up, if we don't say, hey, listen, things are running real hard right now, we're probably going to get a slowdown sometime in the future. The good news
Yeah.
is this time it's not going to have an impact on the housing market like it did the last time. Bring that conversation up. Wait for that person to debate you. Well, no, the last time prices dropped 20%, like the world almost ended. How could you say that? Then bring up this slide. And David, I know the KCM crew has a bunch of slides on this issue. Then
Right.
bring up this slide and talk about it. What we don't want to do is bury our heads in the sand like we did the last time.
Yeah.
We wanted to make believe that there was no real problems. Everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. I think we should bring up some of the tougher questions, some of the tougher issues, because, and again, you know, we can go back to a standard. Good agents know how to deliver good news. Great agents know how to deliver tough news. The fact that a recession's coming will be perceived as tough news, but it's not the calamity that people are thinking when they're reading it, and we have to change that. We have to change that when we're going out and doing our own marketing. We have to put this in our own marketing. We have to change that even when we're sitting in a listing presentation, whether they bring it up or not, because we know they're thinking about it.
Right.
All right. And lastly, we have to bring it up on every conversation. That's why I implore people to take some of you. Again, you have pictures of your cats on your phone. Put pictures of your profession in the housing industry on your phone.
Right. No, it's a good point. It's a great point. So in this topic of recession, it leads into the next of the questions really centered around lending standards and are they beginning to loosen, in that quick memory of isn't that what caused the problems 10 years ago, and talk a little bit about why that's different now and what we're seeing.
Well, first off, lending standards are loosening, so we have to thank God that that's taken place. Of course, they got way too tight. So the example I like to use to really solidify this, and I think you guys have a graph on it. I like to look at the mortgage credit availability index put out. There it is, by the Mortgage Bankers Association. What they do is on a monthly basis, they look at how available is mortgage credit, how easy is it to get a loan. We can see all the way to the left in 2004, the index stood at just under 400. Now, the higher the index, the easier it is to get a mortgage. The lower the index, the more difficult it is to get a mortgage. Well, we can see that normal, before there was a boom and a bust, that number stood somewhere between 350 and 400. Well, what happened? Well, it got crazy. It was very easy to get a mortgage. I always say, today it's difficult to get a mortgage. Back in 2006, it was difficult not to get a mortgage. All right. And we saw that the index shot up, more than doubled, meaning it got way too easy to get a mortgage.
Right.
After that, and after the crash and everyone was scared and the panic set in, it dropped like a rock. It didn't drop back to normal numbers between 350 and 400. It dropped all the way down to almost 100. Now, we've come back from that over the last 10 years, all right? But still today, the index stands about 1/2 of what a normal market would be, meaning it's still much harder to get a mortgage today than it was then. So when we're looking at that, again, whether you're have it in your presentation manuals, I think very strongly with an explanation, you should put this on Facebook.
Right.
This is a perfect thing for Instagram, where you can really show people that you know what you're talking about. In a market where so many consumers are confused, there's so much, different types of information flying around. If you could be seen as the thought leader, the really trusted advisor that does know what's going on, oh man, when you sit down with that family, they already know that they should listen to you. So get this out in everything you do. And again, one last time, please put it on your phone. So when your Uncle Charlie says, wow, we're heading again for a foreclosure thing, the banks are going crazy again, you can just pull this out and say, well, no, actually, we're not even back to where we were before there was a housing boom and crash. And people will always say, well, what about the foreclosures? Steve, that's what really ruined us the last time. Well, I was really happy to see the KCM crew did a study on this. And they found a survey or a study that showed are foreclosures increasing or decreasing, and they did it by state. So when I saw the map, I think you have that map. When I saw that map, I laughed. So everyone just has to realize that we're about to show you a map. Any state that's red has a challenge. Any state that's red means foreclosures are increasing. Any state that's gray means foreclosures are about the same. And any state that's blue means foreclosures in your state are decreasing. We already know they're at a level as a nation, going all the way back as far as they were recording data on foreclosures. But let's take a look at your state. The only people who have to be worried on this webinar are the people whose state is red. Now, for all the people saying, I don't think Steve sees the same graph I'm seeing, I know there are no red states, because there's no state in the union where foreclosures are increasing. As a matter of fact, 49 out of 50, they're decreasing.
It's powerful. It's very powerful.
Again, it should be, because you're going to have that question. People are going to ask that question.
Right.
It should be in your social media, all your marketing, your mailings, your email campaigns. Information like this has to be there today. Now, I get it. 10 years ago, consumers were not ready for us to come in with that information. If you came in with a bunch of information and data, they would see you as a numbers nerd. In today's market, after what happened over the last 10 years, an agent comes in with the right data, understanding the right studies, right surveys, and makes it nice and simple for the consumer to understand. They no longer call you a numbers nerd. They have a new term for it: a professional.
Right.
Because that's what a professional does. They sit down and explain simply and effectively what's taking place in the market.
That is good. That is good. So we have a question. I'm going to pause for a second. You want to take a question?
Sure.
So it's from Michelle Williams, a KCM member. I'm going to read it here. What was the range for a normal mortgage credit? Well, she's looking for the mortgage credit availability index. What was the normal range? I'm going to go back to that slide. Will you cover that again?
If we can put that slide up, yeah, there we go. So what we can see in 2004, and if we go prior to 2004, that number ran somewhere between 350 and 400. That was the normal range. It bounced back and forth amongst that, meaning some, at some points the credit was a little bit more difficult to get and some was a little easier, but it was in that band between 350 and 400 for quite some time. The reason I'm showing this, I start where it started in 2004 before the boom, where it was at the boom, and where it was after that. But the normal range is between that 350 and 400 number. That's the band that eventually, when we get back to it, and I think we will, eventually we'll get back to it, that's the band that we'll be comfortable in. Now, this is the Mortgage Credit Availability Index. There are other things that I know KCM has studied. Urban Land Institute talks about mortgage risk. It shows the same, it doesn't have this index as a separate index, but it tells the same story. It's much more difficult to get a mortgage today than it was, prior to the boom and bust.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's a big point. I mean, really, we don't know what the future holds, but for today and for the spring market, it looks pretty good, right?
No, I don't think it looks pretty good. I think it looks better than pretty good. I think that again, I'm not an analytical, I'm not an anecdotal guy. I'm a data guy. I like reading the data. The challenge with being a data person is the fact that the data has to be accumulated, has to be, put together and surveyed and studied and then put out. So a lot of the data we get is a little bit older than what's currently happening, obviously. But what's happening right now, the data that's coming in is showing to be much more positive about what 2019 is going to be about. And talking to people on the ground, I went out to, speak with at different speaking engagements, over 5,000 agents, because I wanted to talk to the agents themselves.
Right.
And they're reporting even more positive feedback than the studies that are coming out right now. So I think that, again, there's a time lapse. I think that we'll see, I don't know if every single report will be better than the report before, but I think we're going to see a momentum. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. I'm sorry I don't have it exactly, because it came out this morning. I was reading it about an hour before this. Fannie Mae just came out and said in their monthly report that they see the housing market on the beginnings of a momentum swing up. All right. So if Fannie Mae is saying, well, wait a second, we're looking at our data and it looks like the market's getting hotter, yeah, that's kind of more where I agree right now. I think that
Right.
agents who work hard understand that even though there's more listings coming to the market, we need more listings. There's still not enough listings. The month supply of listings right now, even though we've got a lot more listings coming in over the last couple of months, the
Right.
month supply of listings is lower today than it was during the spring buyer's market last year. Lower today, not higher, lower. So we still
Right.
need more listings. And in the upper end of each one of our markets, the premier properties, and if you're in a luxury market, most definitely, what you want to do is the best way to get a listing is get the price correction on your current listing, because those
Mhm.
things we might need to go ahead and get the people more realistic as far as prices are concerned. What that also means that in the upper ends, they're probably, because most agents won't have the courage to go sit with their current clients, they'll just hope it kind of goes away,
Right.
right? There'll be more expires in that market too for us to get. So what we need to do, what we have to do, is we have to make sure that we have a good listing base. If we have a strong listing base, the agents who have a strong listing base will not control the next quarter. They'll control this whole year. And there's probably good evidence that if you control this year, you'll probably control the next couple of years. Because here's an opportunity. There's a time when a lot of people are sitting back thinking things aren't going to be as good. They're cutting back a lot on what they're doing, their investment in the business, whether it be an investment in marketing, time to, putting into the business. There are a lot of agents cutting back right now. You should be, putting the pedal to the metal right now.
No, that's good. That's good. Um, Before we go on, I want to ask you one other question that we got
Sure.
in from Linda Streetman, and she's asking in really in simpler terms how the mortgage availability index is calculated.
I wish I knew the answer to that question. What she's asking is a methodology.
Right.
What's the methodology of the index? So I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay.
I do trust the Mortgage Bank Association, but I get that you want to know the methodology. What I would suggest she do, if she's a member, she knows that in the research section of the monthly market reports, we put in the actual URL where you can go get all the information.
Right.
If
Right.
she goes to that URL, if she's not a member, then she has to go on the MBA website, type in, mortgage credit availability index. Then it's not an easy site to go through. So hopefully she's a member and she can get the link, direct link. But she can go to their page and they give their methodology. So if she wants a really good methodology so she can explain it better to her clients, I get that. That makes sense. But I don't have every single
Yeah.
methodology, 5,000 reports we do in my head. She would have to go to that site and get the methodology.
Yeah, and we can get that to her. But I
Sure.
appreciate you taking that
If she's
one.
a member, definitely, just reach out.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I don't
So
mean
let's,
you should give it to her even if she's not a member. I just know
sure.
that the members, we definitely should give it to the members.
Right. Yeah. So we will do that. So let's shift to kind of this next subject
Let's just back up on that for a second.
Okay.
For the people who know me, know Steve Harney, I want you to understand, I love all of you. Okay, I whether you're a member or not a member, I just like the members more. I love everyone. I just like the members.
That's good. That's good. So shifting to this next topic, it's a big topic that's out there in the market today. I've got it on a slide, and it's really this question of, does homeownership matter? And really, we're talking about some younger generations coming in the market. Is it still part of the American dream? There's been a lot of talk and a lot of different conversations happening out there, but let's talk about that for a little bit.
All right. Well, first off, let's set the record straight, because I think it's important that we set the record straight. There are people out there that are saying that millennials are not going to purchase homes. There was just a recent report by a notable person in our business, a thought leader in our business, saying that he believed that the home ownership rate was going to continue to fall and it was going to drop below 50%. All right. And the challenge with all those people saying that, none of them are looking at the numbers.
Right.
Because they can't say that the home ownership rate will continue to fall. It's been rising for 2 years in a row. 8 consecutive quarters have been higher than the quarter before. All right, so one tied. But basically, the homeownership rate is going back up. And for 2 years it's been doing it. So anyone who's saying that homeownership is not part of the American dream, is not part of, it's falling off, is that favored status in this country. Well, the point of the number is the numbers prove you wrong. Did it fall dramatically right after the crash? Yeah, a lot of people lost their houses to foreclosures, to short sales. It took them time to get back in. They're buying back in. The next thing is that whole millennial thing. The biggest jump in the homeownership rate, percentage-wise, are millennials. As a matter of fact, I think it was Ellie Mae that came out with a study, we've already reported on it, that showed that millennials were the highest percentage of people getting new mortgages.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
the homeownership rate is still very, very, it's going up in a nice way. It turned that downward trajectory up, and I don't understand. It drives me crazy because those stories keep on coming out that, well, the homeownership rate is dropping. No, it's not. And if they missed a quarter, if they missed 2 quarters report, I get for 2 years, it's not been going down. It's been going up the opposite direction. Wake up. Those people that are reporting that, I feel like running to their office and grabbing them and shaking them and say, look at the numbers. Look at what's really happening instead of reporting what you think should be happening.
Right. And to add to that, I mean, the Ellie Mae number that you just mentioned, we're releasing on Thursday a KCM video with that gives that number that 42% of millennials are now responsible for new mortgages being, originated, and it's powerful information.
The videos you guys are putting out, I'm seeing them because I sometimes see them on social media or in my emails by agents that are sending, that I'm connected to. They're unbelievable, David. Who's ever doing the videos, you're taking a myth that's hurting us and destroying it like in a minute, 2 minutes. Well, how long are those videos?
Well, they stay under a minute, yeah. So they're right at a minute.
So in a minute's time, you're taking a myth like this myth and destroying it. And the best news is at the end, all the agent's contact information goes up. So it's the consumer's mind. It's the agent that educated them to what's really happening in the market, and that's what KCM's really all about.
Right.
Now I get it. I get that. When things were going fine and everyone was just happy, you didn't need to have. If you don't have this type of, and if you don't get it from us, get it from somewhere. If you don't have this type of information in your presentation manuals, in your marketing, on your phone right now, I don't know if you can consider yourself someone who truly cares about the people sitting in front of you.
Right.
Because in order to care about them, you have to educate them to what's taking place.
Right.
Not just say, don't worry about it, everything's going to be okay. That's what happened in 2006. That didn't work out well for us. Let's educate consumers so they can feel confident that what we're telling them, what advice we're giving them, is coming from a good place.
Mm-hmm. No, that's absolutely right. I think when I think about this and your point that, hey, folks that are saying things need to be informed as to what they're saying, specific to the home ownership rate in this country, is sometimes I scratch my head and I say, why are we even having this conversation of does home ownership matter?
Well, why we're having the conversation, it might be the fact that there's too many people out there saying things that are just not true. I mean, I got into a little bit of a social media battle with a very prominent, social media expert, a person that has a great reputation, a very intelligent guy. He decided that he wanted to take on home ownership, and he was just wrong. He was just outright wrong that, that home ownership doesn't really build wealth. I gave you, this is a slide I put together and gave KCM. I think you have it here, where it really breaks down, to real reasons from a financial sense. Now, there's a whole bunch of non-financial reasons to purchase a home. But if we just look at the financial end, take a look at this. This was just put out by the National Association of Realtors, looking back 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and 30 years.
Right.
This is the amount of money, wealth that those families gained by purchasing a house, whether it be in price appreciation, which we ran really well, or principal payments. That number in black on the top of each one of those graphs, or each one of those columns, I should say, is the amount of net wealth those people would have if they did this. Now, people say, well, no, and then they get into, well, it's not.
Right.
Urban Land Institute just came out sometime late last year with their study, and really what the study was all about was senior housing. And what they discovered was that a household that's 65 and older, the head of household is 65 and older, that's who they were looking at. If they were a renter, they had about $6,000 worth of net worth.
Right.
If they were a homeowner, 65 and older, different than this number here, because this doesn't do it by age. By age, 65 and older, the person who was a homeowner had $330,000 in net worth. 50 times the net worth because they were a homeowner. So we could get into all of the non-financial reasons, which are really the more important reasons that you own a home. You want your own backyard. You want the freedom to do the house any way you want to do it. You don't want somebody complaining that the noise is hot, a little loud at your Super Bowl party. All those, you want that freedom to be able to do it. You don't want to answer to a landlord. You don't want to make the landlord rich. You want to make your family, you increase your family's wealth. All right. So all those things are there. But if we just look at the wealth part of it, it's a no-brainer. Right. So why that conversation, and answer to your question, why that conversation is still out there is because there was a narrative that started right after the crash that, you know what, the last 200 years doesn't mean anything. We should base the future on what happened right now. No, the last 200 years in this country meant a lot. Part of the reason student debt was up because people didn't have equity right after the crash. And a lot of their kids had to take out loans where before they would have invested in their kids and they wouldn't have to take out as large of student loans. Business startups dropped off between 2008 and 2018 because people didn't have enough, or 2015, I should say, because people didn't have enough equity. Where do most businesses start? People take out a small credit line out of their house. They come up with a great idea. They pull a little cash out of their house as the seed capital to that company. How many companies started in a garage? Apple, there's one. All right, KCM is another one. They took seed money out, started a little small business. Hey, I think we have a great idea. Let's see if it will fly. All right, but that seed capital needs to be there. And if you're a tenant, you think you're going to go to a landlord and say, hey, listen, would you give me $15,000, $20,000? I think I have a good idea to start a new business. Go ask your landlord that and see what he says.
That's a good point. Such a good point. That getting more and more of these points out there, I think, is everything that we've talked about today. And winning in this market is getting the information out, right? Being a data-driven agent that's bringing the truth.
My dream is the founder of KCM. I no longer own KCM. My son and built this great team around it. My dream was that agents could sit with a homeowner and intelligently explain what's taking place in the market so they can make good decisions. And I had some slides and stuff like that. Now you have videos. You've developed that the buyers and seller guides that just came out, they were magnificent. Now, if somebody really wants to understand or help explain, they have an agent has a 20-page magazine, beautifully laid out with great content. And every piece of content could be backed up with a study, a report, or white paper, not just stuff we're just talking about. If they just got those magazines, the PDFs, emailed them to all their past CMAs. All those people that were thinking about selling and they jumped back on the fence because they weren't sure. Well, maybe now's the time. The CMAs you did in the last 2 years, send them things to consider when selling a house. All right. There's so much great information that you put out in so many different ways that it makes it very simple now for an agent to go ahead and really be seen as the expert in their market. Not be seen, that's wrong. Not be seen as the expert, to be the expert in their market.
No, it's good.
And effectively explain it. Those magazines are just absolutely gorgeous.
I agree.
They're over the top.
Absolutely, and there's so many things that go into that. A lot of this information is contained in both the buyers and sellers guides. So it's great stuff. We've got a few questions in here.
Sure.
Here's what I'd like to say is let's go through a little bit of maybe rapid fire. I'll throw some things out there that members, non-members are asking.
All right,
And
I'll keep it to short answers. I'll give you a quick short answers.
all right, I'm looking at them right here. So this comes from a KCM member, Tego Venturi. It says, I've been seeing stories about a bubble coming with homeowners that did a workout. Any truth to this? Anything you've been seeing on that, Steve?
Well, I'm not sure what they mean by workout. That could mean a lot of different things. What I can tell you is this. One of the things that we have to worry about as far as a bubble is concerned is how much equity does somebody have in a house? Because the reason that a bubble occurred the last time is people, when the bubble happened, they had no equity. So it was easy for them to just walk away and say, hey, listen, this was a mistake. Let me get out of here. So there's two things we have to take a look at that. Number one, right now, today, 48% of all the houses in this country have at least 50% equity. Nobody's walking away from 50% equity.
Good point.
Not like it was in 2006. Number two, part of the reason for that is cash out, and that might be what he means by a workout. I'm not sure.
Right.
The cash out situation on that, some people are reporting, well, the percentage of refinances that are cash out now are back up to where they were in 2006, and they're close. They're not wrong about that. The number of people taking cash out at a house has increased, mainly because now they have cash in their house. The last 10 years, a lot of those years they didn't. But if we look at the number they're taking out, and I do look at this number, KCM looks at this number. For 2018, they took out $62 or $63 billion. Now that sounds like a really big number. I'm not arguing that. But in 2006, they took out $321 billion. So right now they're taking out 20% of what they took out in 2006. And when you take a look at their mortgage debt, because people say, well, mortgage debt is going up, and that might be something else that person asking the question is asking. And there's no question, mortgage debt is the highest it's ever been.
Right.
But that's not the number we have to worry about, because as houses go up, mortgages go up. Of course, mortgage debt is always going to be higher than the last 5 years combined, or not 5 years combined, or the average of the last 5 years. But what I look at is what all smart people look at is what is that debt compared to the amount of money they make? It's per person. It's per person capita, all right, or income. So compared to, here's their debt compared to how much money they make. That number is not high. As a matter of fact, that number now is lower than it's ever been since they recorded it, which I think goes back all the way to 1980. So the percentage of personal income used to pay their mortgage debt is lower today than any time in the last 40 years.
Yeah. And I'll just remind people, Steve, this is a topic that you and I have talked a lot about. Those slides that we have available on cash out refinance as a percentage and as a number, as a dollar amount, are powerful slides to share that really help attack that narrative that this is happening.
Well, here's an example. I'm sure and that was a great question, by the way. I'm sure that person asked that question because he's been asked that question.
Sure.
And we have over and over again agents who thank us because they say, hey, listen, we just listened to the last month's KCM because we do that monthly report to keep the agents really on top of it. And they say, I just listened and a question came up and I was able to answer it real quick. And I got a person off the fence. I just saved a deal based on the slides you just gave us. I just put a deal together based on the information you just gave us. We get so many of those. We almost don't even look at them as much anymore. Right? We're inundated with them. And that's what being a great agent is today. Not worried about, cash out refinances are the highest percentage since they've been since we're going back to 2008. No, that's not what that report said at all. It did say percentages are up, but let's look at the numbers there. People are taking money out of the house today for different reasons. Back in 2006, they were buying jet skis and cars and going out on lavish vacations and buying a boat. Today, what are they doing? They're helping the kids with their college expenses. They're taking money out to start a business. They're taking money out to consolidate some debt they had. Same thing they've been doing for 200 years. That built this country.
Yeah. No, that's strong. It's powerful, and again, being able to communicate that in a way that folks go, I see now. I thought
Simple
that.
and effective with
Mhm.
pictures.
Yeah.
Simple and effectively with pictures.
Yeah. Let's go on to the next question.
Sure.
Comes from Debbie Kalafas. I have a pre-appointment package available in my car. What graphs/info do you recommend I add? Because I don't want to overwhelm them with data.
All right. Well, I'm going to go a different way. I
Okay.
don't know. I think let's take a look at. Let's get a little bit more detail in the question. A great question. I love the question.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make believe you're going to a listing presentation. So you
Okay.
want a pre-listing package. I know exactly what she's talking about. She wants to give them information. Some agents think that, while you're preparing for that listing, they think the homeowner's at home, not even thinking about forgetting you're coming over tomorrow at 1 o'clock. No, they're preparing too. You're getting all sorts of information. They look everything up on the internet. They're trying to get everything they can on housing. What I would do there is not to put in a graphic chart. I would save those for the presentation. But what I would do, very simply, I would take the latest edition of Things to Consider When Selling a House,
Right.
a 20-page magazine with graphs and charts in it, the most recent information we have, put that in as the pre-listing package, so that they turn around and they have really good information, accurate information, where we're controlling the narrative, not someone with some other agenda is controlling the narrative. We're telling them the truth in the market. I would do that. And if you have a buyer appointment the next day for a brand new buyer, I would send out the PDF for the things to consider when buying a house. And I don't know if the people know, we put them out 4 times a year. There's a summer edition, winter edition, spring edition, and fall edition. So they're current.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Every 90 days, we put a new one out. And each one, they're not combined. There's a buyer's edition and a seller's edition. And each one's about 20 pages. Beautiful graphics, beautifully laid out, professionally laid out, like a professional magazine. So it makes you look good. You can put your contact information on the last page, and it can do it. So that's what I would use as the pre-appointment handouts. I wouldn't try to pick slides and stuff. I'd save that. I would put the buyer's guide and the seller's guide based on whether it's a listing presentation or a buyer consultation that you're going on.
That is that's a big point. I was gonna wrap up with just asking you, to talk to what could we do coming out of this right now to win, and I think you just covered it. It was that was good.
The single most important thing, and I've said it like 4 times already, so I'm going to say it 1/5 time. With all your marketing, ladies and gentlemen, let's get away from the chocolate chip cookie recipes. No one likes chocolate chip cookies more than me. But if I'm thinking about selling my house, and there's all sorts of headlines out there that the market might be going back to another crash, I don't need a chocolate chip cookie recipe from you. I don't need a piece of trivia from you. I need to know what's happening in the market. That's what I need from you. So in all your marketing, social media, direct mail, door-to-door knocking, whatever it is, have good information for them. Number 2, make sure in your listing presentations, you have that in your presentations, because those questions will come up, and some of them you should bring up. And lastly, again, your presentations, I'm sure, are pretty solid. We're just going to enhance them. I think about when somebody just walks up to you and says, "How's the market?" If you're giving them the 2006 answer, "Oh, it's unbelievable," meaning we don't know what the hell it is. Sorry, what the heck it is? That's not going to fly.
Yeah.
Pull out your phone and say, "Well, let me show you. Here's where prices are. Here's where sales are projected to be. Here's where interest rates are projected to go." All right. Now, on that pre-appointment appointment, you locked in the appointment. You're going in now as someone they trust already, that they know what they're talking about.
Right.
Or you could give them a cookie. I just don't. It's the same.
Yeah, and I would say to all the members that are on here today, all these slides you have access to. If you're not a member, you can see it on the screen, we want you to start a 14-day free trial and get access to that information so you can control the narrative where you're at. Steve mentioned the buyer seller guides, the monthly market report, everything that we offer to give you resources. And I'll tell you, some of the most interesting and compelling things that we see out there are people that take this information and they do amazing things with it. They make videos with it. They create different things that they're out in their market telling the story before it gets told for them. And that's exciting to see. So it's the top of the hour, I think. We'll go ahead and wrap on that. Steve, as always, it's a blast to have these, and I appreciate you and all the work that you've done to answer these questions, and thank you for all of that.
I thank you very much, David, and I appreciate all the hard work that the KCM crew is doing to make agents really, first of all, understand what's happening in the market and easily explain it to their buyers and sellers. There is a difference between the great agent and the agent. Mm-hmm. And the KCM is doing a phenomenal job of helping those great agents really enhance their reputation. So for all the hard work, for everyone behind you, the 20-something people in the content department or research department that puts all this together, from my heart, tell them thank you very, very much.
I'll do it. So
they're helping our industry.
For sure. Well, thank you for that. We'll wrap on this. And look, folks, we appreciate you joining and making time out of your day to join us for this. And we look forward to seeing you on another webinar soon. Take care.